My name's Adele Onyango and welcome to another episode of Legally Clueless. No, seriously, I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. Hey you, welcome to this episode of Legally Clueless podcast. If you are a newbie, welcome to the farm. Audio episodes like this go out every single Monday and Wednesday. And a little birdie tells me that we're working on a brand new podcast that's going to be going out every Friday. But don't tell them I told you. If you're an old school member, thank you so much for rocking with the podcast. This is what's coming up a little later in this episode.
So fast forward, I moved to Zambia, and my husband is also in Zambia. He's a mining engineer. We're working at the same company. Now that was also challenging. And it was challenging not in the way that you think. I actually genuinely enjoy working with my husband. It's so much fun. But I didn't actually work with him because he was working in a completely different space. So I actually probably saw less of him than a housewife in the Zambian context. But what was challenging was it was the first time I was in a space where people would refer to me as so-and-so's wife. So I was no longer Nono.
Now, I'm really excited about the storyteller in this episode because she's my high school best friend. Yes, all the way from Botswana, and she happened to be in Kenya, but I'll give you all the deets a little later, okay? First and foremost, with all this protests and fight for change that's happening, I forgot to tell you I'm in pre-production for my first ever film. A couple of episodes ago, I told you how my first ever script was picked up for funding for production. And we have begun the process. Oh my God, it's been so great so far. I think I'm super excited because I love learning new things and I've never done anything film related other than being on a Kenyan series many, many years ago. I wouldn't tell you the name, so you don't go look for it. Because I'm so shy. But other than that, I've never been through a process like this before. And it's been fun. We have locked my script in with my executive producer, who is the one and only Emmy-nominated Dr. Merritt. She's just so fantastic. And she's just been an amazing support, been cheering me on from the very beginning. Like when I first got into the writer's room. And so I couldn't ask for anyone else to be holding my hand through this process. I picked my producer, which is also super exciting, and he has been hard at work putting together the most ideal crew. And yeah, I just really appreciate all the very, very hard work he's been doing. I'm crash watching all material that will help me be a better director, because I acknowledge I've not done this before and I want to do my very best. And yeah, as I said earlier, I love learning new things. So it's an exciting process and I will keep you updated on it. Yee! Okay, next thing, which I think you know, I've shared about it in past episodes, is I've been on the streets more than in my office these past few weeks. And I don't mean it as like, ooh, dating. I mean it like, ooh, revolution. We are fighting. We're changing Kenya, and I'm just so proud of us. So this Wednesday on Midweek Teas, which is our second podcast that goes out every Wednesday, I'll share my unfiltered protest experience. It's been wonderful, interesting, exhilarating, exhausting when you have to run away from cops with tear gas or undercover cops, plainclothes cops trailing you through town. Yeah, I feel like now I'm calming enough to share all of those deets with you. So that's coming your way on Wednesday. It's been very interesting to be part of this change in this movement in Kenya. Even tomorrow, I'm joining the Medics, who are going to be demanding for their rights from the Ministry of Health. So they have their protest tomorrow. And yeah, I'm going to be back on the streets. And yes, I'm very, very excited to be fighting for my country. Third thing is related to the storyteller. My high school best friend Nono is on the podcast. I'm pretty sure I've shared this very many times, but in case you missed it, I went to high school in Botswana, a school called Westwood International School. It was quite an interesting experience. I think it was one of the experiences that made me more awakened to race and the nuances around race. But it's also the space where I fell in love with poetry. So whereas there were things or harsh truths about the world I was learning. As much as there was that, it was also such a beautiful point in my life. I feel like it was when the open-minded, very clear on who I am person in me was born. One of the great things that came out of that period in my life is my friendship with Nono. We were amongst the youngest in our year and we just got along. You know, and what's crazy is we still just get along. You know what I mean? Like, it's not difficult. I don't have to think about it. It's not forced. It's not hard. It's just so nice and easy. And she was around in Kenya with her husband. Shout out to you, DK. When we were hanging out, my goodness, you'd have thought that we live near each other and see each other every day because the stories were just rolling, you know, and it was so awesome having them in the country. And I think it's so beautiful to experience such friendships, especially now when I'm being more intentional with the people in my life, intentional about the friends I'm trying to make. It's wonderful to have friends who you can clearly see your values are very aligned. Friends who you might not see each other for a while, but when you do, it's like, woo, nothing. There was no space, you know, like nothing's changed, right? Man, I just love that with Nono. She's so generous. She has such a big, big heart. I love that she's an optimist like me and so, so full of life. So as I said, she came to Kenya a few weeks ago and we got to kick it. But we also got to have her on the podcast, which is super awesome because her story is super inspiring and it's going to take us from Botswana to Zambia to the States to the UK to South Africa and like everywhere in between. And so I hope this story really inspires you because even outside of the story, she has something really dope that she has created just for you. 100 African stories on Legally Clueless. Stories from Africa.
Nono Bukiti from Botswana, born in the United States. When I was born in the States, my parents whisked me to Botswana. My mother's actually from Zimbabwe and my dad's from Botswana. And my upbringing was one where I did feel a little bit out of place because I couldn't speak the local language. In my household, we speak about 5 different languages because of where my parents come from different places. And how my mom will tell it is that I wasn't speaking till I was like 2 or 3 years old. And then I picked a language and it happened to be English. And then when I started speaking, I could not stop speaking. So that was how it was. And I think it was really, in terms of my personal upbringing, I think I had a good upbringing. I lived with my parents. My grandmother also lived with us, or my grandparents also lived with us. And that multi-generational household definitely tapers things out because my parents were quite strict. And I would go and tattle to my grandmother, basically, and be like, your daughter is, can you please go talk to her for me so I can do these things? Because I wasn't allowed to do things like sleepovers. And it was a very, distraught thing. And even when we were in high school, I wasn't allowed to do sleepovers. And just can I at least go visit, my friends? And when I met, people I really gelled with, I want to hang out with them all the time. And it's like, no, you need to stay at home. So that was pretty much it. It was multicultural because I did end up having to go back to the States. And going to the States, if I'm being honest, I felt like I'd come home because I'm loud, I'm very outspoken, I'm comfortable in who I am. And I think that in our culture, in my specific culture at least, children should be seen, not heard, that sort of stuff. So going to the States, and I went there when I was 15, back to the States, I just was like, this is amazing. I just felt like I fit in. I didn't feel like I was this weird person. I just felt like everyone kind of got me. Yes, I did speak completely different to my American friends because they got that accent and I get rolling. And I just had more of the British English growing up because of where I went to school. And then from there, I moved so the States is big. And depending on what state, it's basically moving to a different country. So I was born in Washington State, and when I went back to high school, I stayed in Washington State. And then I was like, I want to be free. So I decided to go to Florida, which is literally on the opposite side of the country at the bottom. So like I'm now not even close to family in Southern Africa or in the West Coast of the United States. I'm in Florida. And for those who don't know anything about Florida, it is a weird place. I did my undergrad there. I did that in 3 years because, frankly, I just thought it was a lot of money because I was partly sponsored with scholarships, and I partly had to take loans to go to school. So I couldn't afford I'm going to do a 4-year degree and just hang around with everyone. I did my degree in 3 years, and then my 4th year, I did my master's in the United Kingdom. And that's where I did operational research and risk analysis and analytics. And when I actually chose that program, my parents were like, what is that? Like, that doesn't sound like doctor, accountant. But they were quite supportive. They didn't know what it was, but they're like, that's fine. Whereas some of the relatives that my parents had, like, what are you letting her do? Like, she's wasting her time in life, because people didn't know what analytics or decision science was. It's essentially using information to help businesses make decisions. And now you have people studying data science, so that's now more widely known. But then it was just like this decision science. It sounded really cool, right? And I wanted to go into consultancy. I wanted to help people. I always wanted to help people. I love like imparting the knowledge that I know to help someone be better. So I knew from the time I finished my undergrad and going into my master's, I wanted to go into consulting. And I even interviewed for a company called Accenture in my first semester of my master's, and I got a job offer. So it was sweet being in class, being like, I know it's going to happen after that. I didn't have the stress of, do I have a job? I just knew. So I was just there to be in school, learn as much as I can. And then I basically started my career. Yeah, so when people usually ask where I'm from, I will, depending on who is around me, tell you I'm either from Botswana or I'm either from the States. Now I'm like exposing my secrets. But if you're from Southern Africa, I'm probably not going to tell you I'm from Botswana, especially if you're Tswana, because you're going to expect me to speak Setswana and I can't. And then I'm going to feel this shame of like, oh, why can't I speak Setswana even though I'm Kalanga, which is a subset tribe in Botswana. So like, yeah. But anyway, I'm like, eesh. But what I've realized is why even in high school, I hung with all the international kids is because I felt most at home with them, because it wasn't about, do you know our culture? It was about getting to know people and their stories and their journeys and learning from them, like learning about Kenya. Like I didn't know anything about Kenya until I met someone from Kenya who doesn't have a name. And then Zambia, Nigeria, South Africa, it was amazing. And I loved that. And I think that sometimes even when working with people in Southern Africa, that's why even my team, they're PanAfrican, because it's that feeling of like, well, if no one feels like they belong, then that's the tribe, right? I've now created that tribe of, well, this is this new space that we can create. In the States, people thought I came from the United Kingdom. So even when I said I come from Africa, they didn't believe that I came. They thought I was literally lying because of my accent and how well I spoke English. I hope I still speak English because of the little knowledge that they understood about the United States. I would have crazy stories of like, oh, do you have lions as pets? And my parents would be like, you need to tell them that you do. You need to like build on that story. And I was like, no, that's not right. How do they think I have do you think if I had lions as pet, I'd be here? And I'd be quite like adamant about trying to debunk the African experience to them. And it's not even unique to the States. So when I stayed in the UK for about 4 or 5 years. And there were people who I admired and respected who were my seniors, who said that they didn't like South Africa because it wasn't African enough. And I was like, what is African enough? Because I genuinely didn't know what they were trying to say. And it's like, yeah, it's like very built up. And I'm like, have you been to other parts of Africa? Like South Africa is just one of many places that have capital cities that have infrastructure that is quite advanced. To answer the question of how do I navigate between the two, throughout my journey, it's just trying to speak the truth of my journey, because it's going to be different from someone who only grew up in Botswana or only grew up in the States or only grew up in the UK. And now I kind of find it like a superpower, because I can relate to people who have like that British kind of upbringing, or I get like the British jokes because I lived there for so long. I get the American jokes, and I also get the Southern African jokes because I lived there for so long. And then my general curiosity of how other Africans live, because this year has been very intentional about getting out into the continent and being truly what I call a Pan-African, and promoting that and learning about different cultures and celebrating those cultures. So when I finish my master's, I go straight into work, and I'm in management consulting. And honestly, I think that when I go to the bathroom, my poo doesn't smell. That's how cool I feel. Because I did so well in my master's. I even like taught my fellow master's students, how to do presentations. Like the professor asked me to do this. So I was like, I got this. First role. Okay, my boss makes me like do a presentation. And obviously because I've been doing this all along and I'm like so amazing. And he was like, this is so bad. I kid you. Imagine the cartoons like running and then there's like a glass pane that just comes and you go bang and you just fall right. That was me. It was like, wait, are you sure? Like, let me just check if you're looking at what I sent and not like this guy here who clearly doesn't know what he's doing. And it was my first lesson in humility, right? Because I was there thinking, I'm so cool, I'm so amazing. It's like, actually, nah, I was around a lot of amazing people. So now to cut above the rest, you got to push a little bit further than the rest of the people. And I think that, honestly, I feel like it was such a good foundation. And I want to just circle back to like primary school. So I went to primary school, and I'm actually going to shout out this school. It was Northside Primary School. And going to so many different schools, because I moved around a lot, my parents moved around a lot, I really felt like that was such a good school. The foundation, like you cannot underestimate a good foundation, whether it's education, upbringing, whatever the case, the foundation is important. And starting my career in consulting with a big organization that had really invested in training and creating that foundation of, hey, you're good, but everyone else is also good. And this is how we're going to make you better. And also myself being humble enough to realize that I do want to be better. So I'm not going to go, oh, that guy doesn't know what they're talking about, but taking that feedback. And then they throw you in the deep end quite early on. I'll be an analyst talking to a CFO of like a multi-million-dollar company. And I'm like, what is going on here? Do I actually know what I'm talking about? And forcing you to sink or swim quickly, and then proving to yourself that you actually can swim. The streets are deep. Like the streets are they'll always be deep. But learning how to swim and then being able to know how to ask for help. So, that's where the managers or the mentors that come into place to help you, guide you, because you won't know all the answers. So I think that like that whole career and like going into Accenture, that was great. So during that time, killing it, doing all crazy things, my parents are entrepreneurs and they had a business in Botswana and it wasn't doing well. And they told me about it and I couldn't stay in the UK. I just physically could not imagine staying there while my family was not doing so well. So I quit my job, and it was a tough decision because I am earning more than a minister in my country. And now I need to go to, I don't know what I'm going to be earning, if anything, to move to Botswana. And I was also dating my then boyfriend, now husband. So that now means long distance. But I did. I felt like it was the right thing to do. I'm the firstborn. I have two younger brothers who are superstars in their own right. But I just felt like as the eldest, I just had to go home and try and help my family. It was, you're like staring, you type it up because I sent him an email. I typed it up and I was like, this is going to change the rest of my life. Like I knew that when I sent this, my life was going to change, especially because I just gotten they done my visa, because I had a post back in the day in the UK, when you graduate, you get a post-study work visa. and then you get like a adult visa. I don't know what it's called now. So they just like paid real money for my adult visa, which I'd gotten. And then I got the news about my family at home, and I just, like I said, I felt like I had to go. So now I'm looking at this email and I'm thinking of like, wow, I probably sound like somebody so ungrateful, but I really just couldn't. And I sat there and I went, okay, I'm going to do this. If I don't do this, how am I going to feel if the livelihood of my family now goes? And I felt like I was going to feel worse than me because I'm young. At this stage, I'm like still early 20s. I graduated early. We got pushed forward. So we even finished high school early. So in my head, I'm like, I'm still, ahead of the rest of the people around me. So I can sacrifice X years to do this. So when I sent that message out, I then told my parents, like, this is what I was going to do, whatnot. And they were like, obviously, as parents, like, oh, don't do it, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be okay. But like, you guys are basically telling me, like, I'm looking at the finances. It's not okay. So send that through. Obviously, everyone's shocked because young upcoming rising star, why is this person like leaving? And then I explained to them, I just have to, I can't. And once I then sent that letter, I had to start thinking about, well, when I'm there, what am I actually going to do to make sure that this decision wasn't just me trying to be like protest, like I'm with you, solidarity and hunger. I got bills to pay. I took out student loans to go to school, remember? So anyway, so fast forward, I come to Africa and honestly, those were the hardest years of my life. Like, so hard. But like I said, the foundation that prepares you for what you're gonna do. So great training at my consultancy firm, now great training for life. Perseverance, consistency, discipline was my 2 years in Botswana. And no one could have prepared me for it. It impacted not only my mental health, I feel like it also impacted my relationship with my then boyfriend, now husband, to the point where we almost didn't even get married because it was just like, I can't right now. I can't be this for everybody. My family just needed so much of me. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I was able to put in, because my knack is building processes, optimizing business flows, and using data to drive business decision. And we actually did turn around the company, and the company's been running for 25 years. And it's used all the stuff that I put in there. So like, where's my bill, guys? I want to check in the mail. Mom, dad, if you're listening. When they go, you sacrificed. I sacrificed. I definitely it felt like a sacrifice in some of those times, because I would even come back from work like so despondent, but I had to go to work every day consistently because it's in oil and gas, it's in petroleum. So you're going to work early in the morning. But there were some fun things. I learned like how to do oil and gas testing from Chevron and, working at Shell and all these cool things, and working with blue collar people versus, my experience is a hardcore white collar, like, oh, we only use computers and we don't talk to people. So like that was also really cool. And also learning how to work with different types of people, like not the diversity of, oh, you're from India or you're from Eritrea, like whatever, but like diversity in our backgrounds are completely different. You're even economically diverse to me. You're even upbringing diverse to me. And how do you still pull teams together to drive the change? And how do you, most importantly, as a leader, because whether I liked it or not, I was coming in as a senior leader in my parents' organization with like very little experience and just degrees, right? And large-scale and multinational companies. So I was going to use consultancy theories. Like large-scale businesses versus like in the Europe, right? Because that's where I was, versus a small-scale company, homegrown. You need to apply different skills. So anyway, did that, learned a lot. I really did learn a lot because I still, don't forget, like I still have that like American in Botswana, when you say little, you go nyana. So I saw that like American nyana thing in me where it's like, I can't believe he tried to do blah, blah, blah. And then I'll go tell like my parents or the directors. And everyone's like, it's not that serious. And I'm like, literally going toe to toe with like directors of other companies. I'm like, this is not fair. Like, my rights. And it's like doing business in Africa is not about your rights. So I learned that very quickly. And it was actually great because I worked with both my parents, like when I go to like these big board meetings. And I remember there was one with my dad. And my dad's really is just love him to bits, right? Because I'm there going toe to toe. And I look at my dad and his eyes are like, what is going on? Like, because I'm very much like my mom, where it's like, I can just cut you with my words quite well. Then we leave that meeting and my dad very calmly, so relaxed, like, no, you don't always have to, you don't always have to be fighting. Like, you could have tried to approach him like, okay, I'll try to do better next time, Dad. And I did take those things, but it's in under the surface. So it's just like you always try to reel it in, but sometimes you're like, this is injustice. And it comes out. So then after that, I went back to the States and did some consultancy work there. And that was fun. Like, because remember I said, like, the States just, maybe it's the way that I frame it. So I've always framed, like, people who are more used to, like, the quirky type of people, because I was a thespian. I even had a thespian pin, which means that I'm actually, like, a professional person, okay? And in high school, when I was in the States, and being in that creative space or being with super creative people, you find that creative people are definitely built different. If you think of it, it's like the spaghetti. It's like all like, squiggly thingy. But whereas if you're like technical background, which is what I ended up studying, it's more like straight lines. So think of like uncooked spaghetti. And then if you're creative, you're cooked spaghetti, because you can malleable and you can change and all that stuff. So that's the sort of people I enjoyed like hanging out with, like super, super fun. Like, oh, let's make a dance. We're going to make a dance. Like, I even made the people at Accenture do like single ladies dance. Like these 3 guys, don't remember their names. If you guys are still out there, please reach out to me. And we recorded it and we looked so cool. And it was like, we were like, yeah, single ladies. And so I love doing stuff like that. But then and still now, I still feel like there are some overlaps, but it still feels very two separate sides. So fast forward, I moved to Zambia. And my husband is also in Zambia. He's a mining engineer, and we're working at the same company. Now, that was also challenging. And it was challenging not in the way that you think. I actually genuinely enjoy working with my husband. It's so much fun. But I didn't actually work with him because he was working in a completely different space. So I actually probably saw less of him than a housewife in the Zambian context. But what was challenging was it was the first time I was in a space where people would refer to me as so-and-so's wife. So I was no longer Nono. In Botswana, the firstborn is the name that you call the parents. So my mom will be called Mago Nono, and my dad will be called Rago Nono. So I'm like putting my name on other people at this point of my existence, okay? No one's putting, like, my name's not disappearing. It's in the history books as far as I'm concerned. But I'm now in a space where people are like, you are so-and-so's wife, and introducing me as so-and-so's wife as if, I don't even know how else to explain it. Like, I'm just an individual, and I happen to be married to this incredible, super supportive man, but that doesn't define, one, my knowledge and the fact that I'll still outwork you, outpace you, outperform you any day of the week. Just Google me, seriously. So it was just one of those things of like constantly having to prove myself and being in the mining industry, because I did in Accenture, I was working in the mining industry, I did stuff with BHL and stuff, but it was more in tech in the mining industry and not me being a miner. So now coming to site, you're now with like miners, and it's very different. Like the mining industry is, people go like, oh, women in tech have it hard. I'm like, guys, women in mining have it hard. Like, and I never considered myself a woman in mining. I just considered myself a woman who was working in the mining industry, which, please, I think is very different. But it's like, it's super hard. So the nuances in working in the mining industry, and I want to say specifically in the Zambian context, because I do think there's a cultural context to that, is that culturally, and please don't come and slay me on these comments, but culturally, how I've interpreted Zambian culture, it's very traditionally African. A woman should be a homemaker and the husband should be the person who is at work bringing in the quote unquote bacon. So in that regard, everything that I did was opposing that. Like my mere existence was opposing that to a lot of people. And it's not like they want women in the mines. They were women in the mines. But however I was managing it was different. For example, a manager will make a comment about why I'm driving my own car and my husband's driving his own car to come to work, which is like so bizarre because I have when I come to work, I'm coming to work. So I have my own things I'm doing at work, right? I'm doing business improvement. I'm doing transformation. I have to meet different people. I'm not like kind of like sitting in the office where my husband is. He's doing something completely different and doing great things there. So, but like even when my mom came to visit, she came to visit and we were living in this really small place called Kalambila, and my husband left his car because the mechanic was fixing it. So my mom drove it around the neighborhood, and all the people who were in the houses who were local came out and were watching my mother drive, and they were like in awe at the fact that she was driving. When she told me the story, I literally was just like, okay, definitely culturally different. So that's why I go like there is some like cultural context to it, and also where we're living is quite rural, so that also adds a layer. Like, for example, wearing pants sometimes, it's like, you should be wearing dresses. I felt like people did hear me. I did feel like I was listened to, but there would be just like weird comments. Like when you go to the grocery store and you pay for the groceries and your husband happens to be there, and it's like, how are you paying for groceries? Like, and it's things that are just so bizarre. Like, I can't even take offense to them because I'm literally laughing because it just seems so crazy. Like, this is not real life. This is a movie. Like, when you're driving, it's like, should you be driving type thing? And I'm like, I've probably been driving longer than any of you here, so let's calm down. And I've driven trucks, by the way, so we're safe. And just certain things like I think my individuality and being wanting to be seen as an individual, even though I'm married. So not wanting to be called Mrs., just call me Nono, like it's okay, we're safe. I think that kind of like does something to people. But I had like great people in the industry that I felt did respect my individuality. Even if they were surprised by it or maybe at all by it, they still allowed me to push what I had to. And it wasn't easy. It's definitely fighting and pushing that. But like, yeah, it was like, hey, I'm going to go back to money. I don't know. You'd have to pay me a lot of money. I'm glad to. It sounds terrible, but if I'm being honest, guys, I am so glad to be out of there because it was hard. I would come home crying, and it wouldn't even be crying because of my own things. I'd be crying because of how hard it was for other people. Like, they would be telling me their stories, and I'll just be like distraught at how is someone living like this? And I can't even do anything to fix it. So I worked there for 7 years, but I created a program there based on the stories that I was getting that were basically making me depressed after work, was to try and empower people. So I wanted to impart what I knew in a package program that was going to allow them to basically, maybe if they're lucky, move upwards, whether it was within the organization or outside the organization. And that's basically how Transformation Leader was born, because Data Sentinel started during COVID. But it started during COVID because I was scared that I was going to get fired, and I didn't know if I was going to get fed. Literally, it's not even a beautiful story of, oh, and I just thought I was like so intelligent, and then like, no, COVID happened and people were getting fired left, right, and center. Like, I'm not that cocky to think I'm immune. Luckily, I didn't get fired, but it did spark something to go, hey, if you want more in this world and you want to do more, then you need to be more. So in that regard, like, that was basically what happened. It's like I decided I was going to do Data Sentinels, and I did it part-time. I did it with friends, even got my husband involved and be like, hey, there's this client that wants this stuff. You want to help me do it? And he'd be doing it on the weekend. So Data Sentinels is an AI, data science, and digital transformation company, because that's pretty much what I went to school with. That's what I did in consulting. That's even what I did when I was in Botswana. I was just like, how do we leverage technology to help a business actually achieve its best self? So with that, you end up being exposed to many different kind of items, such as I might consult for someone who is in media. I might consult for someone who's in mining or oil and gas or finance. But the thing is always the same, start with the problem. What are we trying to solve for? And then how can we leverage the technology toolkit based on their budget to actually start achieving some business results? And some of it can be as simple as, how do I visualize information in a way that's going to allow you to make a decision to know I'm in the green, I'm in the red, as simple as that. So with that, Data Sentinels also managed to do the digital transformation strategy, helping SADC with that. So that was like, hey, girl, Google me, okay? I'm a little bit smarter than I look. But that actually helps give that confidence. Like, as you get more people believing in you and taking a chance on you, you realize that you're able to actually do more, and then you want to do more. But through doing like the digital transformation stuff that I did in the last 2 years, because my role changed and I had to help with like trying to basically improve the business digitally, I realized that people were kind of like the hindrance. So technology is inanimate. It's just a thing. But who's going to use it, how they're going to use it, that's what's going to actually change how people work with that. So I had to then now, the program that I built, the BI program, that was what actually sparked Transformation Leader. Because after training 200 people, in 12 months, we saved 10 million USD. And I told the GM at the time, shout out to the ex-GM, that I was like, I'm going to save 10 million by the end of the year. Pumped my chest. As soon as I turned, and he doesn't know this, as soon as I turned, I was like, what did I just say? Now I have to save 10 million. And literally the first month, I was just like, well, as long as I save $1, it proves the concept. It proves every dollar matters. And we saved $1 million. So when we saved $1 million the first month, I was like, hey, right now I'm now deity status. Like, I'm unstoppable. I'm a superhero. Google me. Blah, blah. Like, I was even walking in the hallways like chips on my, not even a chip, chips on my shoulder, and then trying to remain humble. But I was really pumped up, and it was so amazing. It was so amazing to see how many people we got promotions for. So amazing to see how many people were brave enough to even leave the organization and do things that were, wow, we didn't even see that. That's so amazing. And that's why Transformation Leader just came to be. I was like, this is needed all over across the continent. How can I basically empower people to do what I did here with 200 people, saving 10 million in 12 months, to then the whole continent? And that's why we want to impact 1 million African lives by 2026. And anyone who's part of that Transformation Leader, you're impacting 1 million lives, because it's all of us, right? It's not just an individual. And it's really the premise of Ubuntu, because as I was working with the people in Zambia, I realized something, that colonization probably has made us look at our culture in a way that's not always positive. And I do think that there are leadership lessons from our culture that get things right. And that's probably why you find people in the villages less likely to have depression, because of that community, that interconnectedness, and not trying to be so individual. And I think that that's why people are struggling now, is because we are so isolated. And I can put my hand up. I'm definitely someone who is an isolated, like, it's hard for me to make new connections to my inner sanctum. And I feel like the older I'm getting, I have to be very intentional about, like, okay, let me try and make friends, like in the friends of like high school day friends, so you can tell them everything, and because it requires trust. And I think that it's quite important, because even when you look at the data. Why am I now sounding like a geek? I'm sorry. 2 seconds. Let me just segue to a random piece of information I know. But if you look at the data of people who live long, the people who live the longest actually have community. It's not even the food that they eat. So you can eat chocolate, but if you together and live forever. Essentially. So I think that that's really important. And that's what we try to do with Transformation Leader. Like, we have clusters, and the clusters are supposed to break down silos, because if you're in one department, the creative department, and I'm in like the tech department, we'll be in a cluster together. So we have that cross-pollination, that creativity. And I feel like, shout out to all the creative people out there. I don't think we spend enough time, like, really, creative people are so important. I actually think that if we didn't have creative people, we wouldn't have, like, everything that you see wouldn't even exist. You need someone who is able to, like, imagine something from nothing and create that. And that act is actually not given to everybody. Like, not everyone can do that. And that's what's so crazy about it. So shout out to creative people out there, because through that, I was able to create Transformation Leader. And with that, it's just me trying to facilitate other people's greatness and their journey to greatness. So Transformation Leader is an online learning platform that focuses on community learning. And what I mean by community learning is that it's the Ubuntu, I am because we are. And the expectation is that you need to bring everyone along. So even though it's semi-guided, meaning that you have to finish certain courses by certain times, and we have brand ambassadors who come in, who are actually experienced people who have jobs. So it's someone who's either an entrepreneur or someone who's quite senior in their organization. So they are living what you want to maybe be. Come in and actually do workshops with you guys, with your senior management, if you go to the Transform tier. There's also Innovate for people who, I don't want to hang out with randoms, even in my organization. I just want to do it by myself. So you want to be self-learning. We also have that. And we also have free content. And the reason we have free content on there is because we do want to impact lives. And one of the main issues is we don't have enough leaders. And we're trying to create leaders who not only know how to inspire, but we want leaders who know how to empower. We want leaders who can actually make that positive impact and sustainable change. So that's why we have free content on there, because we're trying to make sure that the next generation and the generation currently coming, we're next. No one's coming to save us. So what are you going to do about it? Are you going to go there, stumble, make mistakes? Or are you actually going to make sure you have the right tools to actually do something great? And we have something called an impact log. And the reason the impact log is there for whether you're paid or not paid, it's there for anybody for the rest of their lives, is because I do believe that we always talk about making a difference, but I'm like, make a difference in the community that you're serving. You don't have to make a difference like, I'm going to change the entire world. There are people who in your neighborhood probably need help. So we encourage our transformation leaders to actually log the impact that they're doing. And that's how we track that impacting 1 million lives. Because if you're protesting against reforms that you are not, and you're peacefully protesting up against reforms that you're not, you can still put that in. You're impacting lives. You're standing up to try and make something better. And then you're also able to actually see, in the year, what did I actually do? And it's such a lovely way to, reflect, to be do I want to do more? Do I want to do less because I want to spend more time with family? Whatever the case may be. And for organizations, it's perfect because that helps with your ESG reporting, right? So your environmental sustainability reporting. And I think the last thing is that community. Because in my my last 6 months, I've been struggling in terms of initially I thought wow, are there people who are like me? Who actually want to make a Pan-African difference, or even not a Pan-African difference, just a difference in their space. And through this, I'm like, whoa, there are so many of them out there, but it's hard to find them. So this is where we can find them. And that's why we even have podcasts and YouTube videos and spotlights, because we're trying to show people hey, someone who looks like you or doesn't look like you can do it. Because you might be motivated by someone who looks like you, and you might be motivated by, if that person can do it, then crap, I could do it too. So I feel that's kind of how I look at it. It's just trying to really put great faces on them. We have amazing CEOs who are doing crazy things, running multi-million-dollar organizations, as well as just somebody who is a specialist in their organization. Because transformation leader, it's not a job title. I really, truly believe that anyone can be a leader. And it's just equipping you to be the best leader that you can be, because your leadership is going to look and feel and taste completely different from mine. But it's still going to impact lives, right? Because that's what we're in the business of, impacting lives positively and sustainably. So in closing, if you want to be part of the transformation leader journey, you can go to www.t4leader.com and you can sign up. And the registration is quite easy. We even have an Ubuntu AI. So if you have any questions, you can ask Ubuntu AI, and she's a she. Any questions, and she should be able to guide you through that process. And you can actually start logging your impact basically today. And in terms of people who want to start in terms of impacting, I would just say do it scared. I do understand that there's a lot of shame around failure, especially in community-centric cultures, but you have to understand that nothing was done without someone having failed and tried again. So have that courage to be like, it's okay to fail. Like, try and remove that shame around that failure and then start.
Catch more African stories in the next episode of Legally Clueless. I hope you enjoyed that story by Nono. Oh my goodness. I know I did. First and foremost, I love how young Africans, we are embodying Pan-Africanism intentionally. Like, even with our actions, with our decisions, we're being very, what is the word? Proactive. That is the word. We've been very proactive about it. And I just love that. Even just her intentionally going to different African countries is wonderful, to actually be in those countries, be on ground, and to push this wonderful work that she's doing. So if you check the show notes, you will get a link to the Transformation Leader website, so you can go and sign up and be part of it. I mean, why not? Especially now, like, we're talking about how we want to change Africa as Kenyans. We're talking about how we need better leaders and leaders who have a better understanding of what's happening in communities, have empathy. Why don't you start building that within yourself right now by signing up to be a transformation leader? So we've put the link to the website in the show notes. We've also put a link to the Transformation Leader YouTube channel and a link for you to register on the app. Just in case you don't see the show notes, just go to www.t4leader.com. So www.t4leader.com. All right. Remember, if you want to share your story on this podcast, in the show notes, just fill out our storyteller form and we will get back to you. We get tons of people wanting to share their stories, but just hang in there. Our correspondents will reach out to you. And on top of that, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, we can record you virtually. So as long as you're African, you have a story and it's valid. If you are in the greater Eastern Africa region, be sure to catch this podcast on Trace Radio. All you have to do is go to traceradio.co.ke to stream. And lastly, head over to our website, legallycluelessafrica.com, to not only check out our over 270 other podcasts, but we have 4 seasons of a video series. We have a tour series, and imagine our East Africa tour series is going to come out. Just be patient with me, man. Let me tell you, I don't wanna speak ill of any partners, but please be patient. Be patient with me, all right? It's coming your way. But go to legallycluelessafrica.com to watch our previous tours as you await our East African tour, which will be out soon. And until next time, I'm sending you so much love. To those of you who are on the streets with me, I'm sending you speed. Because when that tear gas comes your way, you need some speed. I'm sending you speed. And to everybody else, I'm sending you tons of grace until our next episode. That's it for this episode of Legally Clueless. You can share this podcast with your friends. You can keep it for yourself. I'm not judging. Just make sure you're here next week for the next episode.